Welcome, everybody. Thanks so much for coming to our workshop. This might be a little bit different. We're going to do our best to demonstrate a couple of things. So the first thing we're going to do is demonstrate stories, which we think is one of the best ways to explain things to people so that they hear it and listen and remember. So we are the leadership team of this project, and we're going to each spend just a minute telling you the story we got involved with this. So hang on, and after that, we're gonna do another little exercise that you will be involved with. So, but we're gonna start with our stories. So I'm gonna be first. My name is Susan Fleming. I know lots of you. Thanks for coming. What happened with me, is that a member of our league, who is actually sitting here, was approached by the vice chair of the Chinookan tribe about an issue he was needing help with. That issue was figuring out how to get federal recognition for his tribe. And it seemed kind of we talked about it, it seemed kind of terrible to us that there was this tribe that wasn't getting any of the benefits that they had been promised and the other tribes get. And so we looked into it and figured out, well, there's a definite problem here. We need to do something about it. So we started looking around to others, finding out what other people were doing. We found out, of course, there was a 1980 study done on all tribes in Washington. It turned out that much later than that, somebody had done a study about tribes in their area. So we eventually did a little bit to help the Chinookans, but then we decided we would like to do a little bit more to help in general with the problem of the way tribes are treated and recognized in our county. So that's my little story. And I think, do you want to go next, Janet, since you're the same as my story?
League as well. We'll say that when we were approached, we kind of said, well, this seems like something the league should be able to support. Makes sense, DEI, with this travesty, they had recognition and it had been pulled, this is all wrong. Our local league kind of got behind that and said, yeah. But when we approached the state and the national organization, we got a bit of a surprise. One, the national organization has no positions whatsoever on the tribal situation. None.
Wow, that's pretty bad.
Yeah, that's exactly the. Wow. And then when we looked at the state, we said, wow, 1980, a lot has happened since then, a lot has changed since then. And there was an update to Thurston, but it was mainly kind of around the Thurston area. Well, somewhat. So we said, I think we need to do something about this. This is not right. So from what started as a little kind of thing, it's growing into really Thurston.
Yeah, my name's Eleanor Walters. I'm one of four of the leads in the study. But I'm gonna start back to when I was probably 5 years old. And I would go to my grandmother's house. And while she was fixing dinner, putting it on the table for all of us, my family and brothers and sisters, she would also have a couple plates. And she would walk out the back door with them. And for how many years? 2 years, anyway, I watched her do that kind of thing. And one day, I happened to be playing in the back. It was time to eat. And I saw these two gentlemen with blanket stripe. I don't know what tribe they were from, but they had gotten off the train. So the tracks ran right in front of Grandma's house. And they would hop on the train. I'm not sure exactly, were they gonna go look for work or in the fields or what they were doing, but they were hungry. And my grandma, wow, wanted to feed them. And that was the beginning. I saw a need I saw me. So I'm gonna jump forward to law school where I studied American Indian law.
Mm.
And I lived in Alaska. So I was at Gonzaga, then would go up to Alaska. I worked, they're corporations, not tribes. They're corporations. So I got involved in helping with some probating states of some tribal members. When I was in law school, I worked on the Spokane Reservation and the Coeur d'Alene. That's when I really started understanding the complexity of how you have sovereign nations and you have your own jurisdiction, US government, state, and how complex it is to weed through the bureaucracies. So that's why I'm here to help support. That's awesome.
I'm Susie Hokinson, grew up in Enumclaw, Washington, and remember driving through Muckleshoot, which was horrible. And there was one fellow in my class, John, I don't know if I even ever said hi to him. I was really shy, on and on. And then a former partner and I went to Standing Rock. We were just driving through for one night. And we were surprised all that was going on. We were there when there were just like very, very few people. And then we went back 3 more times. And one time there were over 5,000 there. And then the last time we went, there was no one. There was not a thing left. And then Linnell, in the middle of that, my former husband and I moved back to Spokane the year that the 1980 study came out. And it was just so shitty, gut wrenching. It was just horrible, you read just the facts. And so Linnell invited me to be part of the study from the Eastern Washington side. And I reread the study and it's even worse. And I've been living it for 18 months and it's just given me complete hope, but it's so exciting. Thank you. But, we're way ahead of time.
You're doing just fine. Now, what we're going to do next, though, is we are going to another thing that a lot of indigenous tribes do, and that is go around in a circle and let everybody
You want me to
speak
do it?
for just a second. I'm gonna turn it over to you.
Okay, I thought I was doing it. Go
Go
ahead. Okay.
We have a very eager team here.
Oh, sweet.
This is where everybody gets to speak for just a very short while without being interrupted and without people asking questions or making comments. And it's very powerful. So Susie's going to introduce that and arrange for you all to do it. Go ahead. Let's you.
And did you want us over there? Does it matter?
The closer you are to the owl, the better it is,
Here's the owl.
but that's the owl.
Okay, so the other part of the story is when Eric and I went to Standing Rock, we were part of the morning circles. And someone from each of the camp was invited to come. And when we were first there were only like 12 people there. And we would sit in a circle and you could pass or you could share what was going on. And they always started with drumming and with prayer. And it was just life. And it was very interesting because it makes you listen. You can't interrupt. You can't make any comments. You can't ask any questions. And you really get to think about what you want to share without any interruptions. And then at Standing Rock, we would go around the circle as long as it took for no one to have anything more to say. But it was always funny because there'd be new people, Caucasians, there that we'd have to go around 3 times because they still had something to say. And yet there with the Indians, with the words coming out of their mouth. And it was real. I come from a family of 5 daughters, which my dad never taught because he had always said, you're not going to learn anything. And I keep saying, Daddy, please talk. But it really has made me listen and let people say what they mean to say and listen thoroughly. So you've got enough time to think and say, and we always get in a circle normally. So we won't be able to be in a circle today. And what I would just like is for us to kind of maybe start at the back. Oh, we'll start at the front. And just if you want to share your name and where you live, and if you have a memory or awareness of tribes in your life. Would you be willing to start?
Sure.
Thanks.
Irene, Clark County, Vancouver, Washington. My first memory of a powwow, I was about 12. My mom was the Head Start director in Butte, Montana. And so we went to powwows when they came to Butte. We had a civic center that would hold a lot of people. So that was my first memory. It was very powerful. Being one of two white people in a room full of Indians was great. Good learning experience.
I'm Holly. I'm from here in Thurston County. I grew up in Southern California and went to Catholic school and we studied the missions. And I was told there were no California Indians left alive. Oh, I was at school. What a lie that was. But as I came into my teens, I started making pilgrimages to Mount Shasta. And at Mount Shasta, I met a Lakota medicine man named Charlie Tom. And he was breaking the Lakota rules at that time, so long ago, and leading sweat lodges or iniping with white people and letting women and men be in the sweat lodge together. And so that was my first introduction to what you were talking about, the deep listening, opening up, having the most eldest person or most honored person lead opening prayer, songs, drummings, all of that. So I've been involved with the two major tribes in Florida for over 20 years before I moved to Washington. And that was really a learning experience for me with the Miccosukee and the Seminole tribes. And coming here, I just plugged right into this.
Yay.
So, yeah. Thanks to Eleanor and all of you.
Hi, I'm Lydia Zapeta and
We do need to speak up. I'm not supposed to talk.
okay. My name is Lydia Zapeta and I don't follow instructions very well. But I'm here because I work on immigrant rights. And one of the things that I have noticed over the years, my family, by the way, my two grandparents from Mexico, is that many of the immigrants are indigenous people, but they are not recognized as indigenous people. And I find it so very ironic that we are telling people who are indigenous to this continent that they may not live here. And we are sending them out of this space because they don't belong. And yet their ancestors have been here for hundreds of thousands of years. And so it means a lot to me because I know how indigenous cultures die because I'm 20% indigenous of tribes that don't exist anymore, that are extinct, that cannot even be named. But they're Mexican, so they don't count. So that's why I'm here.
Kathy Gills, Snohomish County. I moved here indirectly from Georgia. I moved here in '89. And in 1990, I started working on something called the Water Resources Forum with Christine Gregoire. There was a water rights backlog in the state, and Chris decided to bring in all the stakeholders, does that sound familiar, and see if we could work together to come up with a solution to get rid of the backlog of water rights permit. Because of the collaboration, I got to meet Billy Frank Jr. and work with the tribes for 3 years because they were obviously one of the primary stakeholders when you're talking about water in Washington, and not just because of sand. So that awakening, it was an awakening to me because I had not had any contact with indigenous culture until I moved out here, has stuck with me, and that's why I'm here today.
Hi, I'm Eileen Harkey and I'm with the Thurston County group. And I grew up on Long Island, many towns named after tribes, but never recall anyone talking about it. But I used to work for the US Fish and Wildlife Service here in Lacey and eventually in their headquarters office, but I was a records manager. And there was an old warehouse that our fisheries office used, and it was filled with all sorts of boats and things people would use to go out and do surveys in waterways. But there was a kitchen filled with filing cabinets, and they were the sharp corner filing cabinets that were dangerous, and there was bugs and spider webs, and I really didn't like going into these filing cabinets, and I had no idea what was contained in these cabinets. And I opened up a drawer, and it was this thing called the Bolt decision. And fortunately for us, I was working with the National Archives and Records Administration, and the gentleman I was working with, he took one look and said, oh, we need these. Because the Bolt decision, of course, it sounds like everyone here is aware of, I was not. And so we did a direct accession of 26 boxes of materials. And the reason we had those is because before there was a national, the tribes coalition commission, the Northwest Indian Fisheries Commission, the local US Fish and Wildlife Service, they were representing the government in that case. And so our biologists worked with and aside with Billy Frank Jr. and did just incredible work representing the tribes at that time when they didn't have that kind of commission. And so we were able to directly send those documents to the archives so that they could eventually be prepared and made available to the public. And so ever since then, I've been very, very interested in, they just celebrated the 50th anniversary last year, as many of you know. And the Fish and Wildlife Service history is a little bit lost in that, but who cares? I mean, it was an incredible decision. And I was glad to play this little teeny sliver of a role delivering those boxes of materials to the archives.
Ruth Dills, excuse me, Thurston County League. I have a very personal connection with the issue, and that is that my son-in-law is Skokomish, and so therefore my grandchildren are Skokomish, and I feel very honored and privileged to be part of their lives.
Such good stories. My name is Tracy Riley Kelly. I'm from Clark County. I was a continuing education administrator, and I began working with a Lower Chinook elder named Sam Robinson. And at that point, I became aware of the Chinook fight for recognition. And then also, just over the last year, I've been working with Sam, and I have been writing his recollections, which is interspersed with all of the different things that happened in the 5 nations of the Chinook tribe. And it's been so interesting. So yeah, I'm very in.
So my name is Evelyn Strawn. I'm with the Seattle King County League, and I'm a fairly new transplant from Massachusetts. Not only Massachusetts, but Plymouth, Massachusetts, which plays an oversized role in our mythic history. The police cars said America's hometown on it. So half of the pilgrims died the first year that they were here, and the reason that even the few that did survived because of the help of the Wampanoag. And this is not a tribe that has been federally recognized. They sort of like wiped out. Part of them now have been recognized, but I was active in working with the local Wampanoag, then getting some of Plymouth land transferred back to the tribe, which is their burial. There was some burial ground.
Oh my.
Yeah.
Keela Williams, Seattle King County as well. I just had one experience when, after the 2016 election, in despair. And then I hear on the news what's going on at Standing Rock, and I just couldn't believe it. So I just hopped in my car and I took off and I went there. And it was an amazing experience. I can go into more detail, but there's others who have things to talk about.
Thank you, yeah, and also thank you. Isabella Ludwig, I'm from Pullman. My connection is a little bit more emotional as well. Similar to Plymouth, there was an Indigenous family in the hometown where I grew up, and I grew up very poor. And though I was white, you know, it was never an issue for them to feed me and my siblings. And it was people who did not have enough for themselves. And that continued even when I moved up to Lewiston for school. I became pretty enmeshed with the Nimifu tribe there through their mythology classes and through their theater work, telling the part of the monster and a lot of their other myths. And again, some of the only people who made sure I was fed, even when they did not have enough food for themselves often. It's important to me.
I'm Carol Goss from the Thursday County League, and my first recollection was when I was about 8 years old. My mother told me a secret about her family, and it was that her mother, my grandmother, was married to an Indian in Oklahoma, and that just had a profound impact on me as a young child, not knowing anything about her background, and she never got to meet her father, and that was. I think to her last day. Her secret is not being told.
Well, I'm Jody Disney. I have kind of a long connection in tribes, but my main experience was living on the Kaw Reservation as a young person. And my dad was the commander of the radar station. And oddly enough, because, you know, when we needed to have friends, I became very involved with kids my age on the reservation. And, you know, Hayden slept in their houses and, yeah, so that was a lifelong love affair.
My name is Karen and I'm with the Thursday County League, and as a child growing up in Washington State, my dad quite interested in the tribes, and he would, when we would be going places in the mountains and things, and he would say, this is where the white people were made, the native people walk barefoot up these rocky cliffs that's going like from Enumclaw in that area. And but so I was always very interested, but as you know, most of you know, I'm heavily involved with our civic education books. And when we hired Jo Severance to be the author of the book, she said, we cannot talk about state, local government. We have to include tribal government as well. And so she said, you and I have to take that class at the state office authors. So we had a whole day with a tribal person who is their job when people are hired by the state. They have to have this training, certain people. And so it was all about the treaties and all kinds of information. It was like 6 hours of just input that was amazing. And so that was helpful. And then as she was writing the book, she worked heavily with the woman who was the head of the governor's office of Indian Affairs. And she invited me to go to all of her interviews. So that was an amazing experience for me. And then my husband decided he just loved playing musical instruments, so he took up the Native American flute, and that often led to going somewhere where he would be going to flute training, and I would be there, and I would be in reservations in Montana, different places there. I feel very rich.
I'm Mark Hagen-Smith, and I'm with the Thurston League. And I have, growing up, I grew up in Tacoma, and so the Puyallup tribe was always part of that community. But one of the things came to my attention just a little while ago was that when I first worked for the Department of Corrections, which was the Washington State Department of Corrections was established in 1981. And I started working there in 1983. And I worked in the program area. And in the program area was religious programs was one of their programs. And during the initial days of the Department of Corrections, I remember the staff person that worked very hard to make sure that there were sweat lodges available in the Department of Corrections. And they, so sort of a positive take on what state government does.
I was born in Oklahoma near a reservation. And I just remember the kids in our school were all good. We were all white except for the indigenous folks. And it was all good, except that right after school, they would bus back to the reservation. So we didn't really get to be good friends. So
Paula Lewison, Port Orchard, where the Kitsap County League. Grew up in Niles, Michigan, which is a city of 4 flags, and was born at Powhatan Hospital. Potawatomi Indians are the tribe there, and it was just always part of history from elementary school. But was raised traveling to my mother's hometown of Alabama and going to state parks, Mountainville, which is a sacred ground where the Indians were buried in the middle of Alabama. Just always would go out of our way to stop at a place that might have something, but it's always personal experiences of moving to a new area from Michigan. I just felt I need to know something, so I appreciate this group.
I'm Shelley Schneid, with the Thurston Night. And I grew up in California, do nothing, the issue. I won. Yeah, and that's the only thing we ever learned. There were no Indians anywhere, according to where I grew up. And when I moved to Alaska, everybody has the population. But I ended up back here in Washington and worked for Kitsap County as an attorney. And there were 3 major tribes there that I worked with a lot on both sides. They sued the county, and sometimes we were adverse, and other times we were on the same side. And I got to know I thought a lot. I had a case that was an offshoot of the Bolt decision, and which is still going on as far as I know. And then I joined the committee in Thurston County to do our study, and man, I learned a whole lot more. There was so much we are taught, and we have to learn ourselves, and it's a real subject dear to my heart. So I would have been on your committee, but I couldn't have been, so. But you will. I can.
Well, I'll just tell one short story. So I taught at the Evergreen State College, and 1 year we were looking at how people learn. And one of the book we were using was talking about cultural ways of learning. And one of our students, this is for freshmen, came to us and said, well, could I just do a demonstration for you? I happen to be a Native American, and I can't quite remember if it was Lakota, but that's what stuck in my mind. And we said, well, of course you can. What would you like? Because the whole point is you demonstrate in indigenous culture. You don't sort of talk at people. We were talking at people, of course, and they were talking back. So, so we said, of course, and she brought her brother, and they showed us some fancy dancing, and they explained that they go all around and hold these contests and you could win. And we had, of course, no idea about this. We just opened up, plus they were very good. They were very good. This is all in her own initiative to talk to us. And this woman's name is Maya Bellin, and she ended up getting her master's degree, and then she's famous in the state for her work. She's really something, and was really something at age 18, yeah. Yeah.
And your name?
Oh, sorry, I'm Susan Fixell from the Thurston League, sorry.
I'm Ruth May from Spokane. I was born and raised in Cheyenne, Wyoming. As a child, at 6 o'clock on Friday evening, all Indians who at that time were railroad workers had to leave the town and were not allowed back into town off of the reservation until Monday morning in time to go back to work. Fast forward, I ended up living on the Clearwater River in Idaho, where I owned and operated an inn, heavily integrated into the tourism business. I was very much a participant of what was called the Lewis and Clark Bicentennial Trail going across. The history, I was almost on the Nez Perce Reservation, so I had the honor of not only becoming friends, but working with a number of the Nez Perce elders and understanding that the layer of history was not Lewis and Clark Bicentennial. It wasn't Lewis and Clark, it was the Nez Perce. And of course, the Nez Perce saved their bloody butts. And it was quite an experience, very humbling. It was full circle for me.
I'm Kristen Multeen from Pierce County, and I'm basically here for education. My connections are not close. You know, when you talk about this close personal relationship, I grew up with my paternal grandfather telling stories about Native Americans coming through his property in North Dakota, and he could communicate with them, and it was always very positive what he had to say, and just their spirituality makes so much sense to me environmentally. So just here to learn. Thank you.
I'm Carolyn Trimble. I'm from Tacoma Pierce County League. I'm a retired state social worker, so my connection is through my work. And through that work, I was able to connect with many of the tribes here in Washington and corporations in Alaska. And learning about the Indian Child Welfare Act, really immersing ourselves in Native American cultures in our area, and being honored to be a part of that and work with children, families, tribes, corporations to really empower their people.
Can you understand?
My name is Angela Gurko. I'm from the Jefferson League. I grew up in Alabama, and I came to realize that I think my teacher in my Alabama history class probably broke several rules, because we learned about the Cherokee, Chickasaw, Choctaw, and Creek expulsion and the Trail of Tears and all of the lies that were told. So I grew up knowing that, and then when Lauren Ulrich's Good Wives, her book Good Wives, Image and Reality of the Lives of the Women of New England, 1650 to 1750, that book of hers talked about the fact that 2/3 of young women who were captured by Native communities during 1650 to 1750 stayed.
Right.
They chose not to go back. And growing up in the 1980s in Alabama and understanding that, I'm like, oh, well, that makes a lot of sense to me. And I just want to acknowledge the people on Zoom. I don't know, Susan, if you can see them.
I cannot.
So I will go ahead from my tech host position.
Okay, go ahead.
And we have, in order on my screen, I will ask folks to unmute and share their story. Marilyn?
Yes. Um, I made many trips across the country, and so some of my first impressions were coming through New Mexico and Arizona, and going through the Indian reservations, seeing how barren the land was, but yet how beautiful it was, despite the barrenness. So that was kind of my first exposure. And then when I was in high school, my church youth group, we went during Easter break, during spring break, and worked on a couple of Indian reservations, helping them clean up, build, build a building or whatever. So for personal experience, that's what I have. And for a more professional experience, I just think that this is such a Black history in American history that we really need to be stepping forward and doing something about it. I wish I had an answer what the solution was, but I don't. But part of my solution was to participate in writing up about one of the tribes in the area, and I chose the Shulalep tribe. And I was just fascinated by all of the industries that they have going for their tribes people, how they basically anything that the white man may have, they have. They have gas stations, grocery stores, they have a shopping mall, and of course, they're basically known for their casinos. But I was really impressed with what they are doing to provide for people on the res. And then, kind of on the sad part of it, is just listening to them in their loghouse talk about the fact that their culture is being lost because the children are going off the res and not coming back, or when they come back, they're speaking English and they have English customs and they don't really know about the Indian customs, about their native customs. And so I think that is a real important thing that the elders are now doing, is trying to bring all of that back to their cultures.
Thank you, Marilyn. I'm just going to note that it's a little hard to hear in the room because the speaker is a little off, but your words are being captured on the transcript and on the recording. So you will be part of this record. I see, Joanna, you have your hand up.
Yes, I don't see myself on the screen, but I assume I'm there somewhere. I don't have any prepared remarks, but I wanted you to know that our local UU church has a Native Connections group that's been quite active for several years now. And I think the most important connection made has been with what's, I believe, called Native American Youth Coalition. And locally, they meet at a place where camas fruit still grows in our area in the Pacific Northwest. That was used as a food group to add to their diet of meat and shellfish and other things as a starch, camas fruit, C-A-M-A-S. And they get together, and I think this is the third year they've done so, to dig up the roots to learn the traditional use of it and cooking of it in burial pits in the ground. And they learn a lot about their culture as a result. So it's youth carrying on traditions. Quite a lovely thing. White people are not invited to the part where they're actually sharing their meal and doing the preparation, but we have been invited to share a meal with them and cook the soup that goes to the meal. So that's a fun part of it. Thank you for listening.
Does anyone else from the Zoom group want to, or we can just go ahead and move on? Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you all. That was really a well done. We listened.
Okay, great. I was almost going to say, I need a minute or two of silence. I really appreciate what you all shared. It's very powerful. Okay, what we're going to do now is as promised, we're going to give you an overview of the project and where we are. So we'll do that, and we'll take turns talking about the parts we're most familiar with. We're going to go over what we call topic areas. We kind of divided the project into what we call topic areas. Thank you, Peggy. So there are kind of subject areas. It's a huge subject, as you probably have figured partly from what you've heard and what you know. So we'll just give you a little bit of update on where we are. We'll go over the topic areas, look at the kind of break them down a little bit, and then we would like to know what you think we should cover that we haven't covered. Okay, so I'll go through this as quickly as I can. Let's see. I'm going to skip this. This is what we call our elevator speech, which has been our elevator speech for a while. This is a map of all the reservations in the state. If you're not familiar, look, there's some huge ones there. Then let's see. You've met us, the leadership team, but there's a list here of all the leagues that are involved in our committee and in our work on the topic areas. Clallam, Mason, Kitsap, Snohomish, Clark, Thurston, Spokane area, Pullman, Yakima, and Seattle, King County. So lots of people. It's been a great experience, actually. Okay, now we're going to go over scope, challenges, the education portion of the project, and visits to tribe across the state. So we'll take turns talking about those things. So Ellen, you are first.
I'm going to be really brief because I'm watching the clock now, Susan.
Yeah.
First of all, I'd like a show of hands of those of you that are on the study committee, the update study. Okay. Good representation. Karen, get your hand up there. As Janet and Susan introduced the Chinook, we want to be federally recognized again. We were, and then we weren't, and then we were, and that's a whole nother presentation. We went into the convention a year ago, and we really wanted to be able to have the state update their 1980 study. We wanted to help educate within our own leagues. We wanted to help educate the community if those forums can be organized, and those that are interested, including yourself, that might want to carry some of the messages or some of the study. And then we want to advocate, because we're the League of Women Voters. And I won't get started with voting rights, because you know where we are on that one. And it extends itself deeply into Indian country. So it gives me chills. Got a lot to talk about. So advocacy, education. I spent part of the winter, going up to the Capitol. There are multiple legislative initiatives and bills that were introduced. Some will be reintroduced next year because they didn't get passed, but affecting Indian country. But I'm just going to tell you about the scope. We started as a group, maybe 12 or 15, with the help of Shelley. Shelley, raise your hand. She's our project coordinator at the state level.
Was the liaison.
The liaison, yeah. And so she helped us get started. We had a bit of a time trying to figure out how we were going to cover the whole state of Washington. And our goal was to talk to every tribe, someone in the leadership if we could. So we started off with a letter to the chairs, and we didn't get a lot of response. In fact, we didn't even get 10% response.
What?
Not surprising. I was in the Thurston study. Shelley was in the Thurston study. Peggy, Karen. And we know that we call it Indian time. You have to respect it, and you have to work with it. And you want to, because after all, isn't that why we're all in this room and why we all shared our stories? So we kind of put our heads together and started outlining the map, who was interested. And this woman here, Susie, was the ambassador. She reached out to so many people, and here they come. We just started having more and more and more. Now we have about, what, 20 some, 23. Now they're not all active, but that's okay. They're following along as best that they can, and we're happy to have them. So we started with research and reaching out. Took a little longer probably than we wanted, but now we are in the writing phase. And we're dedicated to getting a draft by September 1st. Once the draft is in place, it's going to be a lot easier. We're going to take a big breath of fresh air, and we're going to get people involved in editing, reviewing, reading. Jody, I know you've been there before, and getting feedback. And certainly, this is one of the challenges that Janet would talk about. We're going to go to the tribal members who we might have quoted, we might have written something about their tribe, we might have used their logo. Okay, is that public domain? Can we use it without their consent? It's a special relationship we have with our tribes. And we all need to acknowledge that. And so we will delicately move through that review process. And then come back to the lake, and there'll be caucuses, and then there'll be positions that we will develop. Hooray! It'll be a grand day that we have some state league positions beside the 4 that we already have, and that we will feel comfortable. Our lobby team, I'm hoping, will get involved in all this, and we'll be able to advocate. Janet, what?
Hey. Go right aside. Well, in his seminal book, When Custer Died for Your Sins, Vine Deloria Jr. critiqued the fact that so much had been written about Native Americans, all by white people, with white people defining who the Native people were and telling them what they needed and what they should have. And when we started this study, we said, we don't want to be one of those studies. We want to be very deliberate about not falling into that category. And the way to do that is that we wanted as many Native voices as we could. The narrative has been out there, written by the dominant culture forever, for hundreds of years. We wanted a narrative that centered the Native voice. And we said, bunch of old white women primarily, how are we going to do that? And we decided the best way to do it was to get ourselves out of the way, to try and find those voices that are Native, and to really center that rather than what we thought or what we saw or what we interpreted. And as Eleanor said, that proved to be a bit of a challenge in doing that, because so much of the kinds of conversations that we needed to have a relationship, because especially in the Native world, those things are relational, not transactional. And that has taken time. We've also really relied on the written word, written things, that books and different stories. Sometimes there are, like Confluence is one of the organizations that tapes stories of the various tribes along the river. And so we've used all kinds of different ways in which we can get to those voices and have something there. Excuse me. Did you step away?
The next challenge though now is representation and the writing of it. Again, we have kind of the league format, which tends to be an academic, let's have facts, let's really prove things, let's, guarantee that this is the way it really is. And while that's a perfectly legitimate way of knowing things, that it's not necessarily the way that Native people have passed on their information for hundreds of years. They're storytellers. They have an oral tradition. And how do we balance those two? How do we keep those in some kind of tension without trying to totally take over their story and fit it into our format? So that's one of the struggles and challenges that we're working with and struggling with at this moment, and trying to find ways of doing that. Even this idea of topics. The Native world is very interrelated. It's not siloed in this way that we approach things. So even the structure of the study, so we continue to have lots of conversations among all of us and kind of struggle with that as to how are we going to do this in a way that is, it's the league bill for what they want and is respectful of what we're presenting. So there we have what we're working on. The next part I'm going to talk about just for like 3 minutes is the education portion of the project. When this project was approved at last year's convention, there was a second part to it, which was a requirement that we make sure the league members are educated about the Indian populations across Washington. So we've tried to figure out some ways to do that. We particularly thought it would be nice if you knew about tribes in your area that you could maybe visit, go to a powwow there, whatever. So one of the structures of our report is we will have overviews of each of the 29 plus unrecognized, about 31, 32 tribes. We'll have overviews that will be short. They'll be like maybe 2 pages. We're having trouble keeping our overviews to 2 pages, but then you can just look up a tribe in your area and learn a little bit about them. So we're going to do that for the education portion. Other things we've been doing is putting articles into the papers that the League of Women Voters of Washington has, as well as our local papers. So that's another way we're trying to just get information out a little bit at a time. Oh, up there. Okay. So those are kind of the basic ways we're trying. And then of course, we get into the situation where you all get the finished project, finished report, and then you comment on it. Well, you don't comment on that, but then you comment on the positions that we recommend as a result of the work we've done in the report. So you'll all be involved in your local leagues on that. So that's what we're thinking of doing as far as the education portion goes. So let's see, Susie, you're going to talk a little bit about your visitations.
Wow, look at what we've done on time. Yeah. Isn't that the league way of doing things?
You have until 20 after.
I know,
Okay.
we're ahead. So before I start the visitations, I am just encouraging everyone to get out their civics book and read it. There's 6 pages in the beginning that is just on First Nations. There's a whole page on the Centennial Accord, a page on the Bolt decision, a page on boarding schools. And I was reading The Laid Up from My Heart, which is just an amazing book. And she's the one that's quoted in our boarding school. But I've been reading lots of wonderful books. But there's a list of all 21 tribes, 7 unrecognized tribes. This is just full of excellent information to get us going. So I decided I wanted to go to all the tribes, and I have now made a trip to all the tribes in the state. And it is just wonderful and exciting. And I'm having ongoing plant sales so my name and number and information is on here, so please take one. But 1/2 of all the money I make on my sale is being sent they're sending 2 huge loads of everything to the Pine Ridge Reservation, and I've already given her $550, and she leaves on her 17th trip on Monday. Okay, so back to this. I have a van, I take off, I go, I sleep in the parking lots, I have foil in the windows, I make sure and spend $100 on every reservation, whether it's buying books or buying gas. And it's just been a wonderful, wonderful experience. So the last major trip was the one when I came to the Faith in Action Network meeting, and it was 9 days. I did 1,350 miles, and I could talk forever on any part of this. And then came to the Olympia and was able to talk to 16 elected officials and 4 of their assistants. And I was able to give out this book to every senator and every representative that was on the Indian committees. And it's very hard to find a map. And I could have had you put this one up, but I wasn't ahead of it enough. It's very hard to find a map that conveys the location of the tribe in relationship to the town they're named after. So it's completely different in Eastern Washington. The Colville Reservation is an hour from the town of Colville. It's 1.4 million acres. It has 4 school districts, and the largest school district is in Omak, which isn't on the reservation. But I have now visited those schools, and I've given the book to those leaders. But I do have a gift, and I've been gifted so many things from my visits to the tribe. It's just been amazing, but I have good connections in Spokane. One is Joe Pacotis, who ran for 5th National Legislative District. So half the tribes know him. It just fits me right in. And then we have a wonderful Spokane tribal member who's an attorney and very well known, Margot Hill Ferguson. So I don't make arrangements to go see people. I just kind of show up and it just sort of happens. But I do have these, but the teacher and me will not give them to you now because I want you to listen. But the interesting thing is Eastern Washington, the Colville tribe is 1.4 million acres. The Yakima tribe is 1.37 million acres. The Spokane tribe, I believe, is about, I forgot the number. So I've got the numbers written down. But a year ago, I started putting together a chart with all the tribes, where they are, the sizes, the population, but there's so many ways of ranking it. Whether they're registered tribal members, whether they're tribal members that live on the reservation, and there's so many, and then there's so much land size differences. But I was getting organized there. And the numbers keep changing. So it's fascinating because the Colville tribe, I already told you, 1.4 million, has 9,300 people. The Yakima is 1.37, which has 1,100 people. The Sault-Suato, which I've got wonderful tales about, I believe is 34 acres, 200 members. Shoalwater Bay was the last I went on that trip, was 355 acres and 87 members. But please call me. I want you all to take this. And if you're going near a reservation, but I encourage everyone, go spend an overnight at the reservation. They're reasonable. The gas is really cheap. Talk to all the staff. And if we talk for 2 minutes and then listen. And I highly recommend everyone have a 2-minute speech, a 5-minute, a 10-minute, and then always do half of one. Because if we just say enough and they know that we're connected, I have heard so many stories. It's just amazing. So I did bring a number of these. We have an amazing Fig Tree magazine in Spokane, faith-based, but we have an amazing Salish school that's going on. Then Jeff, where'd that one go in my brain? Disappeared my brain. isn't it nice being 80? Because there's so much in it. And then if you really want people, you can do whatever. But oh, here it is. This is another one. This is Jeff Ferguson, who's the husband of Margot Ferguson, Hill Ferguson, the judge. He is working on a national, very well-paid grant to document all surviving boarding school residents in 20 cities. And I mean, it was so amazing to go to Colville because the old St. Mary's boarding school is there, but I didn't know it really. And they've got a new one that's really amazing. It's this Pascal Sherman boarding school. And I didn't realize right behind it is the old boarding school, and you can walk through it. But I just heard so many stories from so many people. But this is my 2 books that have some of your names in that I got to meet you last year. And it's got so many other names of people, and I don't remember names, but I remember stories. And that's what about. But I am highly recommending this book, which is called The Lost Journals of Sacagawea. And the author is Deborah Magpie Earling, and she wrote the book Red Perma. But I started listening to this and I didn't get it because it's written from a young girl, Indigenous woman's heart brain and wind brain. And it's just a different way than we think. But I highly recommend, I listened to about a third of it, and then I stopped and I watched 3 YouTubes where she's interviewed, and I got it. And then to listen to it. But they were saying that can just really change the entire picture, because Lewis and Clark and Sacagawea have only been white man story. And it's just really wonderful. Anyway, we're even ahead of it more. But I could talk. Oh, could I talk? And I would love to hear your story.
We
Yeah.
need some other people to talk to, so hang on. It's very interesting. Thank you, Susie. Really appreciate your stories. These are
If they're talking, don't look at it.
these are the topic areas that we outline. And you will see the last one is called What is Missing. So what we're going to do is have the one of us that's kind of responsible for coordinating each of those areas come up here for 2 minutes and give you the major points in each one of those, okay? And then when we get through all those, which I think we'll do really quickly, what we will do is have you add points to each of those as you see fit, and I'll write them on the board here. So let's see. Do you want here's your,
How many
so many
votes?
treats, yeah. And I can write if anybody has any.
votes did we get?
Votes? We're gonna vote?
Oh, I thought.
No. We'll just, no, raise our hands. Oh,
Can you talk a little about the original study and what it covered versus?
yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah.
What they're expounding on?
Yeah, I don't know whether any of you were at the convention a year ago in Vancouver, but I had gone through the 1980 study and I had a summary. So I have a really nice page of the summary that I would be happy to share. But no, I'll just give you briefly. It was a really well-written document. Someone did, and Karen knows who that is. I'm taking notes.
So Mary Murphy was from Thurston County League, and she was also involved in political things, but she was a force.
Yeah, and it was comprehensive.
And she was head of the lobby team, and she traveled the world as,
Well, she did her research, and if it started with, of course, the colonization. So you're going to have briefly ancestral and millennial, and going back
thousands of years ago, hundreds of thousands. Briefly,
Not hundreds, I'm sorry,
not hundreds of thousands?
no, 15,000.
15,000 years?
Yes.
Okay, well,
Perhaps 30, but not.
okay, but not hundreds. I guess that was the molten lava or something that was flowing around then. So then, briefly, she went into the different eras. There's federal policy that is going to decide whether, how are we gonna get pesky Indians? We like their land, but you know. So she went briefly through those eras of, and there's a lot of take their land, give them their government, self-government. Oh no, take their children, and then maybe give back some land. And she went through a few pages of that. That is pretty typical kind of historic reading and legal reading for those of us that study that or have studied. When she got to Washington State, I didn't document so much of that, but it was 1974 that the Bolt decision came down. And so the fish wars and all the natural resources and fishing and shellfish then came after the 1980 study. But she spent, or they, I don't know how many people worked on the report, but the report outlined a lot of that type of conversation with salmon protection and natural resources. And so the outgrowth of that was the two land use kind of positions that are still on the books. What else? She did a sovereignty. They did a sovereignty briefly, and talked about the federal government, the Marshall Trilogy, and where sovereignty got into the books or on the books, so that Indian country can rely on. Did they do the periods, the treaty period, and then the assimilation period, and then the?
Oh, yeah, they did. That was up front, but then they got into Washington State, and that's where the salmon protection and the land use, and they decided, oh, we gotta, we need sovereignty as a stabilizer. This is big. So there were four. I can't remember what the other one was, but
As I recall, there were really projects around the fish wars and the fish issue. The broader subject. Sovereignty was one of them.
Yeah.
I think there were two on this.
Could I just throw in, she also went to the Congress in Washington DC and testified about tribal issues. And I don't know how many times, but I know at least 2 times that was her thing, because once she had done this much, she needed to spread the word.
So go figure, though, if the league doesn't have national positions right now, then she must have been testifying on her own time as her own person.
Yeah.
So we'd like to change that. We would. There's too much going on. So sovereignty and treaties, treaties, the federal government needed to decide how they were going to interact with these wild Indians, basically. And they considered then, well, if we consider them foreign nations, then we can, just like a foreign nation, Israel, Russia, we can interact with them and have treaty agreements. And so they said about that, and that's where Washington State had the territorial governor, Isaac Stevens, in 1855, 1854, decide that he would take along kind of a military style group and meet with tribal representatives and present them with the document, the treaty document. Does that sound familiar?
And some didn't want to sign it.
Some didn't want to sign it, and
in my neck of the woods. I'm from Astoria. And so there's a lot of tribes, Chehalis and some Chinook and some of the lower Southwest that they didn't want to sign. And then Nisqually is close. And so Chief Leschi and his brother Quimus might be. And they were very, they saw the treaties were, there was no level playing field. They couldn't, in many instances, understand even what the treaty said because it was in Chinook, that jargon. So it was troublesome. And sometimes they didn't sign it. And in 1871, there was so much controversy that in 1871, then the federal government said, no more treaties. That was the end of the treaty writing and representation. And I think now only Congress, if they want to change any treaty or enter, it's got to be Congress. And I believe that's in something like an Appropriations Act or something defines that. So what happens when you don't have then treaties? Well, what are you going to do? There's a trust responsibility for the federal government, and they started writing policy. And I could spend a lot of time, but I'm not going to. You can read. I'm going to briefly in the study move through some of those policymaking eras. I'm going to stop at treaties and ask you, is there anything troubling or is there something out there that you want to tell us or tell me that's significant? Did it help learning? There's 7 treaties here in Washington State. I don't know how many in the whole country, but treaties are the law of the land. They are a supreme law of the land, and it's being reinforced over and over. So it's nothing to scoff at. Treaty really is important, even though there's multitudes of federal law, statutes, Supreme Court that also set the law.
So talking with and so my son-in-law's in leadership with the Skokomish tribe.
Yeah.
And when we interviewed him, he emphasized about the treaties that those tribes were not, they were ceding their land in negotiating certain rights. And for him, that was really important, that they had seen what the federal government had done in the central, moving west, and that there were the Native wars, the Indian wars. And so their goal was to avoid that and cede land. So it wasn't a failure. They didn't have a war and lose the land. They gave over the land in negotiation for certain rights and fishing and hunting.
Yeah, and the fishing and hunting rights, in particular, that we hear about usual and accustomed places, they still have their rights in the usual and accustomed. It was in every treaty in Washington State. How did that happen? I guess because they rely on salmon. Yeah. And they rely on subsistence, and that was it. But in every treaty, which was so handy when it came to reinforcing that language. The Bolt decision on up around the country, and usual and accustomed. So that is really good to know. That type of reasoning, yeah.
Every little bit of our treats as things change.
No, where is that?
It's the third one.
We kind of scrambled, Susan. I would have not put that up there, but there's no treaties. You can work around it. You can do federal policy. You can.
Courts have interpreted
Pardon me?
your court cases that have been interpreted.
Yeah, you can interpret them, but they're not gonna I haven't seen an amendment, I haven't seen any Congress recreate or attempt to negotiate a treaty.
And that's considered really important. A treaty is forever. It's an agreement
It is.
between two nations that neither nation can change. That treaty stands.
Yeah, it stood.
So the land is gone, but the rights remain. And that is like critically
Yeah, that's really
important.
critical. But it's only part of the story. I mean, the treaties are only part of the story.
And since we only have 5 minutes left, perhaps instead of going through the rest of this stuff, we could ask.
Just in general.
Yeah, we could listen now. We've done our talking.
Yeah,
Maybe
here's-
we could listen.
We've got, you wanna put up the other,
Janet, do you want to talk a minute about
Just-
economic prosperity?
no,
So I have a comment or suggestion and a question. The question, and I'll give you some time to think about it about the comment, is how are you going to have tribes review the study? So how are you going to get feedback from the tribes on the study before you send it forward? And then my comment is, it sounds as though you're preparing the study in the hopes that it will become adopted through
process.
through concurrence at the national level. So are you right?
No, but that's way, we're not going.
No, but okay, so
That's
as a co-author of the immigration study,
Yeah.
really, my suggestion is that you really think about that ahead of time, because this, if there is no national policy, there needs to be one.
There sure
And so
does.
you should really think about how can you develop positions that could become.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I know that. I mean, it's critical. We realize that, and I love it being reinforced. We just have to also balance it with the state of Washington. So we are the state of Washington. This is a state of Washington study. So, salmon protection might not make it all the way to
Well,
the
then
East
you
Coast.
call
but-
it protection of natural resources.
Yes,
Protection of
yes,
right.
yeah.
Don't need to call it salmon.
Yeah.
I got the same information
Yeah.
from the local news study people.
Yes.
That said, you can focus on Washington, but think about it in a way that
Global.
then can move it.
But let me ask you a question about that, because we have thought about concurrence, but there's been really, really much worse taking of land and messing with people in the eastern part of the country than in Washington. I mean, our tribes have had it pretty easy compared to what happened in Oklahoma and what happened in Tennessee and some of those. So, and I just wonder how that could be dealt with now with such terrible disparities between what happened in various states.
But we still have people in this state who are not recognized. Their tribes are not recognized.
We do?
So, I mean, I think you can think about the global principles.
Okay.
Yeah, but then going back to the question, how are you going to get feedback from tribes from the study?
Yeah.
Well, I was in the Thurston study and I'll look at Thurston folks, and we actually did have quite a bit of feedback from tribes. Nisqually was really good because they have archives and they have historians. Oh, yeah, we met with the historian of Cowlitz and he's available. He lives in Lacey and he's right here and he's going to read anything and everything. Evergreen College has the Pathways program, and Corey Larson, Dr. Corey Larson there is going to help. He is Willie Frank's right hand. So those two go hand in hand. So if Corey gets it, Willie Frank's going to get it.
And we also did the forum where we invited them to speak, which was, an ending statement of what Willie Frank said. Look what the League of Voters has done for us. No one had ever invited us to a forum.
Yeah, but as far as review, it's not ever easy, but especially if they've contributed to our writing or met with us on an interview or just a visit or we visited them, we can follow up with them. We just have
one more question.
We have one question on Zoom also.
Okay, so
I was just gonna dovetail on what she's saying, and we mentioned earlier, all of these issues are very connected. It really is food sovereignty along with
Yes.
tribal sovereignty. It is really, most of it is connected to the land. So that is where I see you have the missing, murdered, indigenous women and people up there too. That is, in local tribes, each tribe has their own outreach, but they are all banding together. So I am kind of curious to see how this will all meld.
So wait, but you know, I've been surprised about, these tribes in Washington were absolutely wealthy because of the salmon and because of all the trading they did, and they were reduced to abject poverty.
At the same time, what we're learning, one thing really underscored, and I didn't quite get it, even with this Thurston study, and every tribe is, anyone want to answer? Sovereign's right, but
Unique.
unique, different. Every tribe is, and the minute you want to try to package them.
We have one.
So the question from online is, I know this is recorded, but will there be a list of books and articles linked somewhere for people to read?
Yes.
So that's, yes, good.
They'll be
And the
really
other
good, yeah.
question Is, have you connected with Deb Hayland?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, I mean, we have in regards to following her advocacy and reading what she did when she was Interior Secretary, and et cetera, et cetera. But personally, no, she's been busy campaigning.
I do want to just say one thing, when you made a comment that they were reduced to abject poverty, and I think it's important to say our US government policies deliberately reduced them.
Yeah.
Poverty.
Yes.
It was not a passive voice, it was active policies, and I feel like that active voice.
Yes.
Placing the responsibility is an important thing to do when presenting, yes.
And it was all in the service of Jennifer.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, we can, yeah, it's.
Thurston County's land acknowledgement is one of the only ones I have ever seen that does say specifically the destruction of these tribes happened, so our civilization.
Yeah, there are ones, and that was thanks to Judith Carter, who was one of our study, worked with Karin on the Thurston study. She kind of rewrote the land acknowledgement after she did the study, 2-year study, and from her heart, and bless her heart, she's down in Arizona, I believe, but.
California.
California.
Yeah. And the more you look at it, the worse you feel about what we did. Because we did do it on purpose. And I mean, at one point, the policy was kill all the Indians. That's documented. So
it'll be documented too.
Yeah.
I mean, I got it right here in the start.
Yes, Holly.
I know
So
we're
the
ready
next group is going to come in.
I'm gonna say it really quick.
Okay.
There's a new addition going into the study that was not even mentioned in 1980, and that's missing and murdered Indigenous women and people.
Yes.
And so we're working on that as a whole topic area. That's very sensitive to get it.
It's a good example of how it's all connected, so.